spirit of truth and reconciliation, we acknowledge the town of Edson is located on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral lands of the Niqawak, Saulteaux, Siksika, Piikani, Kainai, Nakota Sioux, and the Episawak Métis Nations. We honor the knowledge of this land, the elders and youth which gather here, and our ancestors who have gathered here for centuries. Before we get into the motion for the adoption of the agenda, I just ask everybody to make sure their cell phones are either turned off or on mute. And if you do need to take a phone call, please do so outside of council chambers. We will be voting by hand today, council, and I appreciate everybody for taking the time. Budget's an important process, one of the most important jobs that we have to do as council, and appreciate everybody coming in on their Saturday to do that. With that, I will call the motion that the agenda for the October 14th, 2023 Council Budget Workshop be adopted as presented. Who would like to move that? Councillor Taylor?
I so move.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the 2024 operating budget plan for information? And we will go to Councillor Chenard.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. Any questions, comments, or concerns? We're not doing the vote yet, so we'll hand things over to CO Christine Beveridge to talk about this item.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. We've hit the most wonderful time of the year. It's budget season. Before I introduce the budget today, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on 2023. It's been a tumultuous year for the entire community and the organization, to say the least. My team is recovering from the spring that we faced, but I'm confident that we'll rise above, and it's simply just going to take a little bit of time. We've had some staffing transitions, and quite frankly, that's never easy to navigate through. However, I'm confident that we'll come together as a team and be stronger than ever. Council was recently presented a list of infrastructure capital projects that were completed in 2023 so far. I'm very proud of what was accomplished, considering that we were down key positions along with the emergency situation in the spring. We also didn't tender projects until into July this year. All of this being said, there's no doubt there's work to catch up on, and budget is not an area of exception. This is one of the areas in which we need to ensure 100% accuracy. As noted in the RFD, administration has concerns with the current budget schedule and the need for reconsideration to our approach to the budget 2024. During our initial review of our financial state, we found that there are some inconsistencies during this transition period, which significantly affect our ability to produce a high-quality budget for Council's consideration. Given the challenges we have encountered, I'm recommending that we implement an interim operating budget for 2024. Now, this doesn't mean that we're resting internally. What this means is that we're forging ahead and ensuring that we're carefully considering what our staff have brought forward to us, and ensuring that future budget initiatives are carefully reviewed and along with our future financial position. We must consider the impacts of the disasters to our financial position as well. This is an unprecedented situation for the town, and we need to consider how that will affect us for the future. The additional time will also allow us to fill the position of finance manager, which is critical to our success. If the adjustment is approved, administration will prepare an operating budget for deliberation in the spring. This will ensure Council has sufficient time to thoroughly review and evaluate the budget, upholding the principles of transparency and accountability. More specifically, in December, we'll bring forward an RFD with a recommendation for Council to pass an interim budget for 50% of our operating expenses for 2024, essentially the same budget that we passed in 2023. With this, we will likely have some key budget requests for consideration as well. As noted in the package, we are moving ahead with the 2024 capital budget. It is critical that we are proactive and we can tender out the many capital projects that are important to this community. This ensures contractor availability and often the best pricing, which ultimately is the best position to be in. Council, I'm requesting support for this adjustment, and as I'm convinced that reassessing our budget approach can provide council with a more accurate and comprehensive operating budget and overall financial plan. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you, CO Beverage. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns for CO Beverage's presentation here this morning? Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to CEO Beverage. Thanks for bringing this forward. As you mentioned, we've had challenges beyond our imagination this year, and some projects have been delayed or deferred as a result, which is completely understandable. One item that I'm curious about is the utility rates review, and with the delay of the operating budget, if that is something that might be able to be completed prior to that and to be included possibly. Thank you.
Go ahead, CO Beverage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Byer. That project, as was brought forward in a notice of motion last year, we haven't been able to deliver on that project or even start the process. At this moment in time, I won't be able to speak to as far as until we have a finance manager in place. Unfortunately, that project is not something that we can undertake at this time. Most definitely, when we have that position, that's a high priority project as a council project that was requested for consideration. If we recall, we were to bring back the plan with regards to that. So I can likely say with certainty that it would not be considered in the 2024 budget at this time because it was simply the plan that was coming back to council at this moment. I would consider that 2025 is probably a more ideal opportunity to undertake that if council approved it.
Thank you, CO Beverage. Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns before we move on to our next item? All right, with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the review of cash, investments, and reserves for information? Councillor Taylor?
I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, and I believe we are going to hand this over to Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am, Steve, I'm just trying, are we going to have Dave share his screen? Or am I sharing my screen? Please.
I think you are sharing, Paul.
Thank you, Dave. Council and members here with us from the public, my name is Paul Hanlon. I'm the General Manager of Corporate Services. Dave McReynolds is our financial consultant assisting in the absence of a finance manager at this time with TSI out of Strathcona this morning. This is an opportunity, sir, through you to council to just update on the status of cash investments and reserves for the town of Edson. We think it's an important update and to help us just prepare ourselves for the discussions of today and the consideration of a budget for 2024. The town of Edson utilizes several financial instruments to secure the required operational and certain capital investments made in the community. That includes 2 bank accounts, 32 GICs and short-term investments, 5 bonds that are long-term investments when you review our annual audited financial statements. Very quickly, this is September 1st numbers. You'll see the numbers overhead for the bank accounts. We have an unrestricted account, just over $34 million. It is important to note that through the year, this number will fluctuate quite dramatically, anywhere from 28 million to 32 million typically. You'll see a restricted account. This is for some commitments the town has. This is money that really can't be utilized except for that restricted or committed commitment. This is a very strong municipal position. It compares favorably with comparably sized municipalities in the province, and the accounts are earning a fair interest rate in the current interest environment. You'll see, depending on the amount, between 5 to 5.3% interest is being earned on this money. We also have, as indicated, short-term investments that are 32 GICs. These will be maturing at the end of June 2024. Current estimated value of $6.4 million. They are returning interest rates of 4.8 to 5.26% and are performing relatively well in the current high-interest earning environment. Similarly, we have some longer-term investments that were purchased by the town 2 years ago. You'll see that they are returning less at 1 to 2.5% on maturity. They will be maturing the end of 2026, and there is an estimated, and I stress estimated because this would be dependent if we were to sell them early, we would have to go to market and see what the market were to sell them. But if they were to be allowed to mature, they would return greater than that 4.19 amount that we see overhead. Administration acknowledged that the bonds are not currently performing particularly well in this current high interest environment. The town of Edson has just over $29 million committed to capital and operating reserves. That's in 42 accounts. For a municipality our size, it's pretty impressive. These are secured by those cash and investments I just mentioned. So if at the will of or direction of council, certain reserves were to be accessed and utilized through the budget process, that would be coming typically out of the short, long-term investments or out of cash. Currently, the reserves are in a fully funded state. I did mention the ability of reserves and the backstop by cash and long and short-term investments. Additionally, just as we head into the 2024 budget, the town does have unused borrowing capacity of just over $34 million with annual debt serving capacity of $6.1 million from the 2022 year-end financial audits. And administration is recommending that the town consider undertaking the following. Review its current investment relationship with RBC Dominion Securities to confirm that it satisfies the town's investment policy and that it is delivering adequate returns on current investments. Tender the town's current banking agreement and investigate options to perhaps move some of the town's cash reserves into an appropriate, possibly higher returning investment, securing the town's commitments to its capital and operating reserves. Just a reminder, the current high interest saving accounts will not remain when interest rates drop over the next 18 to 24 months, and it may be more suitable to move those into other secure investments. Consider reducing the town's direct investments into further funding of capital and operational reserves in 2024 to maintain liquidity, ensure that all committed reserves remain funded, and it is recommended that we review the town's reserve policy and consider the possible consolidation or reduction of the number of separate capital and operating reserve accounts. Mr. McReynolds is with us as well. And at this time, sir, be happy to answer any questions or see what Dave may wish to add regarding this presentation. Thank you.
Well, I just have a couple of comments, Paul. And first off, I want to say good morning to everyone. And Paul, really good work on this presentation. I know you did a lot of behind the scenes work, speaking with banking and investment representatives. So really good job. I don't really have a lot to add. I do want to just kind of follow up on some of the things that Paul said. I took a review of similar sized towns, your peer towns, with the same population. For an example, Whitecourt, Olds, Tabor, Hinton. The town of Edson has more reserves than all of those towns, and in some cases significantly more. So I think the town is in very good financial shape with respect to reserve funds. And I think that's a key message that council should take away, especially from Paul's presentation. a couple other things when Paul talked about investment and reviewing that. When you do that, I would recommend a really good mix of long and short-term investment, plus a variety of liquidity capabilities. So you're not locked into something for a long period of time that when you need money, the very small penalty or no penalty at all to take it out. So there are those options, and the bank will have liquidity options on your investments. And finally, there are 42 reserves. I think that might be a little too much. If I could say that, there's some operating reserves are very finite purpose, and I think administration and even council have better flexibility if they have larger general reserves that can be used for multiple purposes and for multiple projects, not just specific to one purpose. So I'll just say again, good job, Paul, and I'll help answer any questions I can as well.
All right, thank you very much, Dave, for that. Council, we will open the floor to questions. We will start with Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration or Mr. McReynolds. So this is the first that I've ever heard that our town reserves are currently in a fully funded state. Is that in regards to just the dollar amount and comparing other municipalities? We have several projects that are in the works, like the multiplex. That's about $10 million that's sitting for that. And then numerous road projects that were unable to complete this year, which is completely understandable. Does that take into account where we sit within our asset management plan and our obligations that we owe there as well?
Go ahead, Mr. Hamlin.
Thank you, sir. Through you to Councillor Byer, to all of council. When administration indicates that they are fully funded at this moment in time. That is, we've got just over $29 million in reserves identified. We have adequate cash and investments to cover that. You did indicate that there is some financial commitments, of course, with the multiplex, and that will be and is anticipated to be a mix of funding options that are available, and that'll be determined down the road as we get closer to an agreement with our partner on that project. It's important to also note that when we do bring the capital budget back this fall, we will be indicating the funding of all of those. So for 2024, we'll indicate the funding sources for those capital projects, which will be a mix of grants, a mix of reserves, and a mix of other options available to the municipality. Mr. McReynolds, did you have anything you'd like to add? Dave?
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to our next question. Go ahead, Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Through the chair to Mr. Hanlon and Mr. McReynolds. Public trust account says it's restricted. How restricted is it? What are the restrictions on that?
Sir, through you to Councillor Moore, to all of council. This has been a restricted account since my arrival, and I believe it's in regards to a current an assessment appeal that is being considered by the town. And so in that act of good faith, public trust, the money has been set aside until that appeal can be confirmed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Pasichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration. In what world or municipality, for that matter, would you not have funded reserves? To me, the idea of reserves is your reserve account is money you've set aside to pay for projects. So you have it sitting there. Like, to me, if you don't have money to back your reserves, that's just a piece of paper. So I'm curious why it would be a shock that these are funded.
Go ahead, Mr. Hamlin.
Thank you, sir, to Councillor Pichigny, to all of council. It's a great question. Unfortunately, some municipalities do reach a point where you will hear of municipalities that have to write off reserves because they reach a state where they're unfunded. So just as you had indicated, your reserves have to be backstopped by genuine financial instruments. So typically cash, short or long-term investments. You cannot fund reserves through borrowing. That is, you can't commit future councils or the community to future borrowing to fund those reserves. That's a different matter that, of course, can be considered by council. And so it is an accounting process where you ensure that you have both the liquidity of assets to backstop your reserves as well as continue the operations of the municipality. And when that balance is not met or maintained, then you will see where communities have to write off certain or reduce certain reserves because they are unable to fund them.
Mr. McReynolds, do you have anything you want to add?
No, Paul is bang on, and it's usually in smaller towns where they may have 20 reserves on paper, and but there's not 20 separate bank accounts or individual accounts that hold that money that it can ever use. There's one bank account, and sometimes the value of that one bank account goes below what all the numbers are on the 20 different reserves. So that's an unfunded reserve, and that's when you have to correct your reserve continuity schedule to meet what you have in the bank. So. You're right. Should always be funded, or the reserve statement should be corrected.
All right, you have a supplement, Councillor Positioning?
Yeah, further through the mayor to administration. I don't want to be a part of a council that has unfunded reserves. I'll make that very clear. To me, that's just smoke and mirrors, and I'm not going to do that to the public, and I won't support anything like that. So if you're asking us to have smoke and mirrors reserves, then I'm not going to be a part of that. So to me, that just, to have any municipality that's in that kind of position, you shouldn't be a municipality as far as I'm concerned.
Councillor Positioning, I don't think that's what they're asking for here today.
Well, it makes no sense to me at all that you would have that.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chenard.
Actually, Councillor Pasicny took most of my thunder, same question, but I am disappointed we didn't get the projects done to, not our fault, but I'm very pleased that we have the funding because, like, say, some of the projects due to our, however you want to word it, it was out of our control, the projects, but I am pleased we have the funding in place. So it's virtually a good job.
CO Beveridge.
I know. Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Precision, that is, I just want to confirm that is absolutely not what we're proposing or even remotely presenting to council today.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the chair, through the mayor to Mr. Hanlon, Mr. McReynolds, thank you for bringing this forth. Just looking at your recommendations, and two that sort of I sort of look to in terms of strongly supporting. The last one of the possible consolidation of reserves. I've often thought, and looking through our capital reserves, is that they are too restrictive, and having that flexibility when projects come up, that we can more at ease take funds or move stuff around without having procedural motions or whatever needs to be done. I don't know, but it looks to be a lot when I see that. So thank you. The other one I like is the tendering of the current banking agreement, and just going out and just making sure we're getting the best bang for our buck, which just draws me to the question, like, how long have we had agreements with the current banking systems that we have? Like, how long has our funding been with those banking institutions?
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Taylor, to all of council. Our current banking agreement and investment agreement with the same company has been in place since, I believe, 2014. And that has been, as I think about it, and the investments even a little earlier to that. We moved and changed our investment portfolio to RBC Securities at that time.
Councillor Chenard.
Hi, yeah, through the mayor to which other one, to those individuals, where we made the comment about a negative being 42 accounts, I look at it as more of a positive because, like you said, if all of a sudden a project comes to be, we have it in an investment, we pay a penalty. It would be smarter to pay a little penalty if we have 2.3 million set aside in a separate account for a project that can happen today. Then we're only paying a penalty. So if we had it in, let's say, one account with 30-some million, and we're trying to fund a $2 or $3 million project, so there's an advantage of having 42 accounts, because when you need that funding from that account, you're only going to pay a penalty on one.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Chouinard, to all of council. It's perhaps worth noting that, so for instance, the town of Edson has 32 GICs issued that have mostly maturity dates of June 2024. Those 32 accounts are not specific to a particular reserve account. They're general. They're held for the benefit of the town of Edson. And so you would be able to pull any one, or potentially, depending on the direction of council, you could pull one or all 32 of those if necessary prior to the maturity date in regards to that potential penalty. It's not that they have to be tied. The 32 GICs are not tied to specific reserve accounts.
Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the mayor to Mr. Hanlon. So with the recommendations that you proposed on page 14 of 21, I'm certainly interested in reviewing the relationship that we have with our banking firm. Do we normally have, like when we have with our accountants, we have a renewal that there's a term set to our agreements that they were to provide that service for a certain amount of time, and then we would put that up for renewal. Is that the same thing with our banking agreements, or is that just something that can go on forever if we neglect to look into it?
CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through Councillor Breyer, that is an operational best practice to be always reviewing where you're at with your bank, any agreements that we have with when it comes to banking. That's no different as well as our investments. Our investments should be looked at more closely and making sure that we're getting the best return for the money and that we have enough, as noted, liquidity when we need it. We don't want everything locked into the long term. We don't want everything into short term. It's a balance, but a review is really what, the intention of these recommendations is to make sure that council knows that we are looking at this, and operationally we are going to be looking at this closer in 2023 and early 2024.
Councillor Byer.
Yeah, just a follow-up, please. Thank you, CO Beveridge. So is this something that is planning on being brought back to council for approval, or just an operational FYI, just letting you know what's going on?
Mr. Hanlon, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Byer. Operationally, it is due on both the investments and the banking, and so this will be something that administration investigates. We will be challenging our current vendor on certain aspects of the current history, more recent history, and we are due to update the banking agreement as well.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Just to supplement, we will be bringing back the investment policy. That is something that we'll bring to council for the level of council's support as far as how we want to deal with our investments in the future. That is a council decision when it comes to these sort of situations. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Council, any further questions, comments, or concerns on this item? Councillor Byer.
Thank you. Through the mayor to administration. I'm also in support of reviewing the town's reserve policy. And is that, I'm wondering, are you just speaking, capital and operating? I know that's something we've talked about at budget before, and I feel that there was some resistance to do that because certain things were already scheduled for certain areas, or that we couldn't touch that because it was a part of that project or this or that. So I'm certainly interested to hear if there's another opportunity to revisit some of those things, because some of them have, $5,000 or like just really kind of unreasonably small amounts in them. So I'm certainly in favor of reviewing that. But I'm not quite sure that I follow the third point, consider reducing the town's direct investments into further funding of capital and operational reserves. I'm not sure that I'm understanding what you're asking, or that maybe we've only ever heard that we've unfunded things in the organization, and that we have I know this is old, but our report card from the asset management plan in 2019, everything's underfunded. So I'm not quite sure by lots of money, and we see that every time there's a presentation. That you guys have brought forward, that we our pipes in the ground, we have, what do we call those things? Root balls. There's all sorts of things that come up at all these presentations. So I'm not quite sure I'm understanding how we get from where we're at to where we want to be by not funding those reserves.
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Through you to Councillor Byer, and possibly I may loop back into Councillor Pisicini's comment a little earlier. The desire to take a look at those reserves is one, we recognize at over 29 million that Edson is, again, well funded, strong, fully funded. In agreement with Councillor Pisicini, I want to ensure we continue to be fully funded. And that's where we have more recently been seeing an increasing level of reserves versus what we've spent. So we're funding them, they're fully funded, we have money for the operations of the town of Edson. We simply want to make sure that on a longer term trajectory, we continue to remain fully funded in what we're investing in there. It is a valid comment that in a strongly developed reserve plan, we may be putting reserves away for future projects. One example I can think of that I spoke recently of was the possibility, say for instance, the town needs a new server. Often a municipality will, rather than hit a stage 8 years from now for a new server for $240,000, they'll put $30,000 a year away, anticipating that in 2024, 2025, 2026, and so forth, so that when we reach the time that we're looking to purchase that, those reserves have been planned for, they've been set aside, they're available, rather than coming to council at that year and say we need $240,000 for a new server. So there is a significant amount of planning around our reserves. You are correct, some of them are anticipated or committed toward future investment. And so we want to balance all of that and keep council aware of all of that. And we think there should be ongoing consideration and review of the reserves, and that forms a very significant part of our budget consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Thank you very much for your presentation here today. I've often thought that we have had too many reserves and that our reserve account should be more aligned with our business units within the municipality to reflect to those areas with some, of course, special consideration for specific equipment or specific projects. So I certainly am in favor of looking at that to make it clearer. We have all these accounts all over the place, and then when we need money, you don't know where to take them from. So I think we need a clear reserve policy that is aligned with what we do as a municipality. Without question, to Councillor Byer's point, our asset management plan points to a big deficit in terms of projects, which is a little bit different than what we actually have in reserves in terms of what we are planning out for projects currently. So I don't think we would ever have enough money in our bank account to deal with all of the infrastructure, which we'll get to in our next section of the agenda. But I think we are in a good position to deal with the most emergent needs of our community. And as pointed out, we do have room available as well in terms of borrowing if we need to. It often shocks me, to Councillor Pisicini's point, as I review other council meetings within the province, of they borrow for operating costs because they don't have enough money in the bank to hold them over when that tax revenue comes in. And luckily, we're in a financial position where we don't have to do things of that nature. So if there is no further questions, comments, or concerns, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried unanimously. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept the capital budget initiatives for information? Councillor Chenard?
I'll make the motion.
All right, and we will hand things over to Mr. Hanlon. This is the most exciting part of the day.
Thank you very much, sir. Through you to all of council, I'm going to share my screen here, and we genuinely appreciate this opportunity and certainly do understand that we're approaching the 2024 budget a little differently. And we come today to I do understand Mr. Kitlett's provided a very thorough update about the status of this year's projects. We do have and you'll see on the screen, we do have some carry forwards. Again, given what happened this year, we're in a pretty good position. You've all seen this. I just want to introduce it very quickly, but you will see that there are 5 infrastructure projects, and again, you're familiar with some of these. We do have the 3 parks projects and 2 purchases out of fire services that have been delayed, a purchase out of the parks area that's been delayed, community service and leisure center, of course, we're familiar with the new library, or the library renovations, excuse me, and the work towards the multi-use facility. So just to allow council to remain aware that we are carrying forward 8 projects and 5 purchases. For the most part, the purchases are supply chain issues. They're just delayed. And we carry forward or propose carrying this forward in order to ensure there's cash in place if needed for 2024. If these come forward and if the money is expended before year end, it won't be carried forward. And I think, as Mr. Mayor, as you indicated, here's possibly some of what's most at interest is the proposed capital projects for 2024. And in your agenda package, you've seen this information. It is identified by department, by initiative or project. You'll see that we are currently considering and have considered 26 projects with a estimated value of $6.7 million. I think in fairness, sir, council has seen this, likely reviewed it prior to now, and I am looking perhaps for the will of council if you wish to go through this line by line, or if you wish to provide any other direction. I am happy to cooperate, of course, at this time.
I think just for ease of discussion, we should go line by line to ensure that there's no confusion on what we're talking about. So
Thank you. I do have, actually, Tanya is with us this morning. Thank you. And I'm going to have Tanya take us through the first item, which is a new ice resurfacer. It's identified with an estimated budget of $180,000.
go ahead, Ms. Byers, if you want to turn on your microphone, please.
Working? Okay. Good morning, everyone. So for the new ice resurfacer item, it is beyond its useful lifespan. The motor was rebuilt in 2018. Despite ongoing efforts with regular annual maintenance, it's still reaching the end of its reliable life. We are also, for the past 2 years, have been experiencing the carbon monoxide it's setting off the detectors, and we have to get people in to come and reset things, and it's just really at the end of its lifespan. And the good thing is that it will be carried into the new facility, so it's not a bad time to make this investment. Any questions?
Oh, just keep on going.
Okay. Commercial freezer, the same thing. We just have a very outdated one, and just with asset management, it's important that we replace it at this time. We're in the process of getting a new contractor in to run our concession, and so this would be an important piece of machinery for them to have. Any questions on that? Okay. Griffiths Park, the acoustical noise protection. This is actually, we have put in for a grant under the New Horizons grant program, and the purpose of these are for the 2 programming areas. So in the, primarily in the gym or active living space, we do need to replace what's there. The old stuff has been taken down, and it is an accessibility piece, just ensuring that individuals that do have sensory considerations and disabilities can come into our space, and it's not so echoey and loud for them. So this item with the $25,000, if we receive the grant, it'll be completely covered with the grant. So either way, we've placed it here for your information.
All right. I think Councillor Taylor has a question. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to Ms. Byers. Just going back to the commercial freezer. So with the contractor that's in there, what is our obligation to provide equipment and what is their obligation? Do we provide all like main equipment, what are the ovens or air fryers and stuff like that? Or do they have to supply some things? Like what's the agreement that we have with that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Taylor, the town of Edson does provide all the fryers, freezers. That is all town assets. You're welcome.
All right, we have no other questions. I guess we can move on to the parks.
Did you want me to address this one?
I can if you want. It's up to you.
Sure, go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the parks relocation airport, I think council's aware that last summer we had some issues with safety of our operators crossing the overpass with equipment. So we temporarily moved parks operations over to the airport, sharing a space with our airport operations. That was sort of a temporary solution, and so this is about taking a look at that a bit more wholesomely and trying to figure out the best way to make that maybe a more permanent arrangement for both those operating units to come out of that spot. So it's just a little bit of money to work on, looking at how we can make that work. It's quite cramped right now with everybody in one spot, but we think there's some potential solutions to help that. So,
Councillor Byer?
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. So is that reworking the space we have, or is that like a new building or an add-on or something?
yeah, I think that's what this is about. It's about finding out what the best options are with what we have over there. There was and I know we haven't briefed council on this, so maybe I can share it now. It's probably okay. There was a situation with an existing lease space at the airport with a hangar. The owner defaulted on that lease, and the company went bankrupt, and they just abandoned it. So there's a building there, and the way the leases are structured, when the leaseholder leaves their lease, they take their improvements with them. That hasn't happened. They've been left behind. So we essentially have this vacant hangar and office space that essentially, based on our legal opinion, is now a town asset. So we're going to look at that as an option. So this is just to take a look at everything and find out what the best way to deal with this operational move over to the airport and make sure it's the best solution. So,
All right, any other questions? Okay, we can move on to the next item.
Okay, I can field the cemetery expansion. This is to place new cement runners to create new plots. We are at a point where Athena is indicating that we really need to do that expansion in Section H. And so this would expand us by 192 plots. And it's essentially just marking out, several new plots. Any questions on that? And the skid steer replacement, Rena, our park supervisor, has indicated that it is also beyond its useful life. They've just had to do severe, major repairs and whatnot. Everything is leaking. And I think it's been kind of moved down the road a couple times already. And so the request there is that it does need to be replaced this year. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Byers. Next item, Civic Center renovations. CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to council, this item is something that this is in planning for potential renovations in the future. With the Griffiths Park facility being ideally opened up in 2023, there is an opportunity to look at the space within the town office. One of the things that we are challenged with in the town space is we don't actually have any meeting room space whatsoever for board meetings, for council to actually come in to meet any individuals, business meetings, etc., as well as just functional meetings for our municipality. We often use chambers at sometimes for those meetings, and it's not an ideal space for meetings, as well as looking at the efficiencies of the space that we have, ensuring that the space, we unfortunately, we have people that are working in closets with no windows, etc. And it's, when we think about our future with the library expansion this year, We spoke about what that looked like for the Civic Center renovations. I think from the perspective of administration, I think it's important to just understand that we will likely be in this facility for many years to come. And that being said, let's make the space as functional and effective and safe as possible for the individuals that work within this facility. So this is essentially just to come up with a design with regards to this current facility.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to CEO Beveridge, just wondering the last time this the Civic Center was like fully renovated or had option. I don't know whether yourself or any member of council might have sort of an answer to that. For so long as I've lived here, it seemed like for 20 some years, it seems to be the same. So yeah.
CEO Beveridge.
From our review of records, I couldn't tell you actually when any renovation has been done. A lot is current or existing historical, original, if you will. That's the situation that, you have noticed that there has been very small adjustments being made to our front space, but the rest of the building is fairly original, would be my assessment based on the reports. I know that prior to my arrival in, I believe it was 2019, there was a review of what could potentially be done with this facility. And when we looked at that report, it seemed to be potentially just a different philosophy when it came to what we were looking for. And I think what our focus is to making sure that we have effective and efficient use. And why I mention that is that our work has changed. We have the opportunity where we have remote work individuals, where we need, the opportunity for shared space is something that we're looking at. And I think the key for us is probably meeting room space is essential for us to be able to operate. It's uncomfortable to be taking individuals into our small meeting rooms when we don't have the space and we have to always go to other facilities. And in some cases, we're paying for that space as well. So this is just an overall review. And of course, council, if this was an item that was considered, would definitely be on updated and current with regards to making those decisions.
Councillor Chenard.
Through the mayor to Christine, for the Civic Center, I'm questioning only 100,000, and what you said earlier, we should maybe look at the building, because I agree we're not, and I can't remember in history going back when we've ever done a major renovation. I think the most expensive thing we did, we had to repair the roof, but we should maybe look at the building, see what the structure of the building is, and I totally agree. Not only for meetings, but when I walk into the town office and I'm looking at how the staff is working versus where my own personal workspace, our staff is cramped, and it's, and I'm looking at the staff thanking them, how are you working in this tight quarters? So I totally agree what you're saying. We need to look at the building overall, and as space empties out, I agree, we could maybe change it and, start with small things, but a study of the building, because we might say, okay, we're not getting a new building for the next 25 years. We could look at saying, possibly not adding on, this building's been added on to many times, but we can look at, if we're gonna spend money renovating this building, is it money well spent? So if we're gonna put the new walls in and the roof's gonna fall in, so a study like that to give us an answer.
Thank you, Councillor Chenard. CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Chenard, this is simply just for design at this point. So we feel that is adequate at this time.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to CEO Beveridge, just when looking at design, I think you're using the right words. It's all about functionality, right? And I use like functionality over fancy. Like there's something about, some municipalities love to make their civic center town hall suddenly this huge, glorified, beautiful piece, central piece to their community that can cost a lot of money in terms of designing it. I don't think that's what you're proposing, which is great. And it's certainly I'm looking for functionality. I hate hearing that our staff are in closets. I hate hearing that desks are basically on top of each other. And when I go back to the planning department, it's like a zigzag of maze. I feel like I need a piece of cheese when I get to the end. Things like that need to certainly change and be updated. considering that no one at this table knows when the last time this building was renovated, we're probably back into the 70s here, at least, or further. Looking at the walls, I'm not sure. But yeah, functionality is sort of my focus in terms of that. In terms of, I don't know, you're just starting getting into that design process, but that's where I would suggest. Thank you.
There were plans to do something with this building, but somebody petitioned against it.
Say that? I'm sitting over here, so.
Councilor Pasich.
You stole my thunder there, Mr. Mayor. The last renovation when this building would have been about 84 when they built the new fire hall and they moved out they converted the fire hall used to be attached to the building. So that would have been about, I think, 83, 84, somewhere around there. That would have been the last thing. Then there's been a few minor changes. These used to be all windows. They changed that to a solid wall. There's been very minor changes to this building. But maybe before we dive into spending a bunch of money through the Mayor to administration is maybe there could be other options out there. So let's not leave those other options that may exist in our community. I do know there's a large office building that's really modern and redone inside that may be getting vacated soon. So those are options that are out in this community as well. So some of those things maybe should be looked at. So.
Thank you. Anybody else on that item? Seeing none, we'll move on to food bank roof replacement.
I can field that one. So as you're aware, we have been working with a consultant who, and also with the food bank, and we've put in a grant application for the replacement of the food bank roof. So we have been, the MLA's office has been asking, where things are at, and we don't have an answer on that yet. We're hoping in November we'll find out. And if, if we are lucky enough to receive that grant, then half of this would be covered by the grant and half through municipal dollars.
Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Through the Mayor and Ms. Byers, I'm in the hopes that we can get the grant, obviously. And I know that the food bank roof replacement was something we were looking at, I think, in previous budgets and sort of got pushed back because we were, I think, maybe shocked at the cost of $250,000, right, and what work needed to be done. I think, I don't know, I assume it's really at this point, is it dire? Is it like what situation are we looking at in terms of this roof? Is it, does it have a year or two left in it, or is it really end of life now? This is something we need to do and consider, right? With or without the grant, right?
Go ahead and Ms. Byers.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Taylor, we have been getting a bit of conflicting information about we've had two different consultants look at it. The first consultant said absolutely, needs to be done right away. The next consultant said we can do some patchwork and that will gain us another year. So this year is essentially our patchwork year where we're doing, some small things. But I know the reports do indicate a lot of soft spots on the flat roof, and even for our staff to go up there, they don't want to go up anymore. They don't feel safe walking on it. So in my opinion, replacement is required next year.
CEO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to council, an item that I actually was remiss in noting in the previous item, we are undertaking a life cycle report for all of our facilities, and that we should be receiving that back. I would suggest in the next couple months. So not only does that include the Civic Center as far as what it looks like, as far as how much life we have left in it, but also this is every facility that the town of Edson owns as well. So, and council, with regards to the roof, this has been a situation where I think we heard from the lessees of the food bank that there was considerable renovations that were done to that facility, and then there was damage that occurred. We are definitely, not in the position, or nor do we want to be in the position where we're waiting until it's absolutely at its end of life before we are replacing these things. It's the whole overview and look at all of our maintenance and on our facilities. So very eager to see that report. And, as it stands, we've put this in here. And it'll be reviewed if we get the grant. Obviously, we would want to, it's a CFIP grant in which we're supporting the food bank a facility to be undertaken, but we would definitely review it if it's imperative at that point in time as well. But given the information that we'd had, we felt it was necessary to apply for the grant and start that process, because it might take a few times for us to apply for that grant. That happens.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration. Yeah, it probably, by the sounds of it, is looking at the time that we need to do this with or without sort of the grant at this point. So, the way the CFET works, and I'm fairly confident in terms of the process of getting that grant, based on past track records of people applying for grants within the community and that. So I was certainly supportive of that. I know they've done a lot of renovations, and it is a town asset that we have to take care of. So supportive of that. Thanks.
Councillor Pasicny.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration, and further to what Councillor Taylor just said, I don't think it can wait any longer. And it's one of those things that that serves a huge need in our community, and I think it needs to get fixed with or without the grant. Grant, great, much appreciated, but at the end of the day, we have to get that in the plans and the works to get that done.
I agree totally. Council, any further questions or comments on that? Seeing none, we'll move on to the fire department items. CO Beveridge.
Council, as you know, this is an area that I oversee now, so I'm happy to speak to each of these items. The Ranger 6x6 ATV, that is a replacement of a current piece of equipment that we have, again, just reached end of life. The second item, new flooring for the fire hall. Just a note, this is simply just the materials. Our fire department members have volunteered to install the floor on their own. I think part of it is the fact that it has been quite some time since that fire department has actually seen much maintenance within, and they're just looking at it goes back to that maintenance piece of things. If we leave everything until it's absolutely falling apart, then, essentially it costs us more in the end. But this is a relatively small number, I think, based on just materials alone for the fire department training, that actually the whole, essentially our training happens there, as well as, in the off chance, when we go over there as well, because of our lack of meeting space, we do go over there as well. The next item is the fleet replacement, and just a note, there's an error in this line. It's actually a 1-ton truck has been requested, not a 3/4-ton truck. And one of the things with this is, as again, when we review our maintenance our fleet plans, again, our philosophy with regards to fleet is every organization deals with this differently. And I think part of it is that this is an aging out, where essentially this 1-ton truck, essentially, what this would allow is also for to be able to transport our structural protection unit that we are currently building out for, and that's the sprinkler system, et cetera, that council approved last year. And so as it stands right now, the 3/4-ton truck is just, it's hitting the end of its, I guess not end of its life, but what we need it for our future operations for the fire department. And the final item is the new bunker gear washing machine. So I asked a lot of questions about this. It's not a big amount, but I asked more questions than everyone likes. When it comes to our bunker gear, right now we're using residential washing machine for it. And what it does is the agitator it's actually harder on the bunker gear, and actually for the bunker gear to be longer life, you would actually need less agitation on the bunker gear. So it's important that in also dealing with the carcinogens, et cetera, and dealing with it correctly. As I said, it's great. We've had the opportunity to wash our bunker gear in-house there to this currently. However, just looking at, again, safety of the individuals using our fire department, as well as also adding to the longevity of our gear that we're purchasing. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Chenard.
Hi, through the mayor to Christine. The 1-ton at the fire department, which I totally agree, we must have up-to-date equipment, because when there's a fire, you got to turn the key and go. But could this 1 ton be utilized like at parks or one of the other departments where sometimes, especially summer students, where you don't need a new vehicle, but could we use it over there instead?
Councillor Pisichny?
Through the mayor to Councilor Shedard, no. Absolutely not. Your 1 ton truck will also carry some of the new devices that we have for wildland firefighting, and there's a substantial amount of weight to them. But actually, my question is actually through to administration. First of all, it's covered in fire lights, red, and they use it for other things. You don't use fire trucks for parks. It just doesn't happen.
Well, I would.
Yeah, that's like using your garbage truck to go work in park. Can we use a GFL truck?
Yes.
Yeah, not happening. Sorry. My question actually goes through is on the gear. Are we getting maybe so council knows too, and further to the gear is right now if our gear is extremely soiled, it has to be sent out. And the machine that was put in the fire hall a long time ago is a front load machine that literally pours onto the floor when you wash it, and it doesn't properly clean your gear. And with the cancers now with firefighters, and they're realizing that a lot of your stuff is caused by your gear. So there's a lot to that. And my question is actually, and I may actually get to my question instead of rambling. $13,000, is that enough for a proper gear machine? I'm hoping that we're not just going, okay, well, we don't have a lot of budget and let's just get the cheapest one we can get. That's not really going to hit our needs for the future. So, because I think when the county installed theirs, they were like $30,000. So, and I know they're 30, maybe that would have been for both of them. Maybe they were $15,000 a piece at the time, but that was quite a while ago. So that's more, my question is more of, I hope we're not shortchanging ourselves looking for the least expensive option.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Pisichny, thank you for taking the question from Councillor Chenard. I would concur. It is not something that would be able to be utilized in other, sometimes that works for us, but in this case, it would remain in fire. Secondly, with regards to the washer, I can follow up with the fire chief. That was not the direction to come up with the cheapest option. It's more about the efficiencies and, sorry, not just the efficiencies, but functionality. So we'll follow up with that. I mean, this is the introduction, so I'll make sure that Chief Milton is ensuring that this is adequate for the fire department. My guess was, that was not the direction for actually any of our staff to. It was, a matter of finding what we need and what is a priority for 2024.
And I do believe commercial washers are in the neighborhood of 20 to 25,000 usually. So I think there is a potential that we may need to relook at that item. But I agree with Councilor Pisichny. If we're going to do it, let's make sure that they get what they need. Any other questions for the fire department items? So I think it's great that our volunteer fire department is willing to install the flooring. If that is something they want to do, great. But I don't think we should be expecting them to do that. So I do know that a number of the fire department members are very skilled in this area. So certainly not surprised to see that. But I hope that that's something they want to do, that we're not expecting them to do that at all. All right. Council, any other questions on that? If not, we'll move on to our next items, airport and infrastructure. Mr. Kitlitz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm wondering, just as a question, if once I get through the airport plow blade, if it's okay if I pull a map up on the screen to look at some of the infrastructure stuff, would that be helpful?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to try to get onto click share here, Paul, at some point. But I'll start with the airport plow blade. So this is just a replacement of the existing plow blade that's on the tractor out there for snow removal. This is a very adaptable blade that articulates in all kinds of directions, and it's very helpful for clearing around the obstructions at the airport and the parking lot, the light posts and all that stuff. It's just at the end of its life and time for replacement. So, and I think my understanding that's a cost share with the county. So that's just a replacement of an existing piece of equipment. And now we'll see if I can get click share to work.
Go ahead, Councillor Barr.
Through the mayor, I was just wondering if I could ask for a quick recess. So
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea right now to do a recess, and then we'll get into the infrastructure items. We'll take 10 minutes. Resume the meeting. Thank you for asking for that break. It was very well needed. And if you have turned your phones back on, please make sure they're put back to vibrate. We will. Oh, that's completely fine. That's completely fine. Mr. Kitlitz, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just go through the list here for infrastructure, and I'll use the map to navigate around town just to give some visual context to where these projects will be located. So the first two on the list are sanitary sewer upgrades and repairs. Council may see these as familiar, as they were also highly recommended as top priorities in the sanitary sewer condition assessment that was presented, I think, in August by McElhaney. So the first one on the list is the 10th Ave sanitary upgrades. That is located between 52nd Street here and I think this is 54th or 56th. And it's upgrading the sanitary capacity in this section here, which is identified as a bottleneck. The design work is being done right now. As council is aware, council supported the design, funding for the design work. McElhaney has promised that we will have a design and tender ready package ready for January 1 should council choose to support this project. Questions on that one?
Yeah, so Mr. Kitlitz, obviously we've had a lot of issues along 10th Avenue. So as a part of your project here, it says sanitary. Obviously we're going to be digging up the street. Does this include paving afterwards, or is that going to be in a future budget year?
Through Mr. Mayor, no, absolutely. This is fixing the repair and returning the road back to its state. So it'll be fully restored.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, just looking at the system as a whole, maybe this will be answered in your future presentations here, but obviously we have issues to the north, in Tiffin and in older Tiffin. By doing repairs in this area, is that going to alleviate pressure in other areas of town, or do we know that information at this point in time?
Mr. Mayor, so I think if we go back to that sanitary sewer condition assessment, these two were identified as pretty high priority projects. It is believed, based on the modeling, that they will help. Obviously, there's more. There's more items on that list, but these are two that are going to help. And as we continue to work through that list of projects, it'll continue to increase the capacity for our system. So by my read of that assessment, these are going to help.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, there isn't opportunities to ask questions during the formal meeting. Any other questions, council? Okay, keep on going.
So the second sanitary upgrade is along it's actually 56th Street. It crosses through Griffiths Park and then works its way down 54th to First Ave. Again, this is identified on that sanitary sewer condition assessment as a top priority. This will involve fixing a sag, and I think the recommendation will be to twin some of the line, portion of the line to increase the capacity. Again, we're expecting a design and tender package ready for January 1st for this particular project. The next one on the list is an 8th Ave total rehabilitation. When I say total rehabilitation, it means we are digging up all the infrastructure underneath this particular piece of road, replacing the water, sanitary and storm systems. It means sidewalks, curb and gutter, asphalt. So total rehab of this particular local road between 51st and 52nd, which is right here actually. If you've driven down this section of road, it's quite the mogul field right now. So this was a design project again done this year, and again this will be a design tender ready and for January 1st.
Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor, Mr. Kitlitz, that road is atrocious. I drove it the other day in the fire command truck, and I thought I hit the ceiling in the vehicle. It's bad.
Yeah,
Especially that section.
yeah, it is.
So I'm glad to see that's on the books.
Yeah.
If your back is out or anything, just take a drive down that road. It'll put you back into place. Yeah, this was something that I brought up, I believe, last year. And yeah, this road is well overdue to have these situations fixed. Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. So between the 54th Street Sanitary, there's 6 blocks for $2 million, if I read that right. First to Sixth Ave. And then the Eighth Ave total rehabilitation is one block for 1.6 million. How do we get such a good deal on the 6 blocks and not on the 1 block?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byer, I think what the situation is here is the 8th Ave is a total rehab. So we're replacing sidewalk, curb and gutter, water, storm, the entire street, whereas the previous project is just a sanitary. And some of that can be directionally drilled as well. So that's probably the difference. And keep in mind, we're still waiting on the final design packages that'll give us complete numbers. We've got some preliminary numbers from the consultants, but when we bring this back to council for consideration, those numbers will be a bit more accurate.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Mr. Kitlitz. That 8th Avenue section there, is that a frost heave in there, or 2 frost heaves, or what are they actually?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Moore. So it's a great question. I'm not even sure exactly what's causing that. I think part of the things that I've noticed and been told is with our high ground table here, some of our shallow storm systems pipes, they'll heave. They'll move with the frost and the water in the ground. Sometimes they'll be there one year and they won't be there the next year. I think we've even experienced. So I think it's partly some of that, but it's old. This is the original infrastructure that I think what we're going to see is that every year we're going to be proposing some sort of a local road rehab where we're fixing all the pipes underneath and replacing them. So it's just time.
Right. Thank you.
Go ahead, CO Beverage.
Mr. Kitlitz, for the sanitary, it wouldn't be opening up the entire road, is that correct?
So just to answer that to CO Beverage, yeah, I mean, it depends. I mean, we haven't got the full design yet. Some of them will be a portion of the road, just the center where the sanitary pipe is. But yeah, you're not going from curb to curb when we're replacing those sanitary lines typically. So whereas the 8th Ave is the whole thing is being ripped up. Does that answer your question? Okay, the next one on the list is a design project. So very much like we've done this year, the design work and tender package for 8th Ave rehab is being done right now in preparation for construction next year. We also identified 7th Avenue right behind town center here. And this one's 2 blocks. So I think it's between 48th Street and 50th Street is to do the detailed design for rehabilitation of these 2 blocks of local road on 7th Ave. And so this one's just designed for 2024, and then it'll be a tender ready for future capital projects. Next one on the list, number 18, is add water well 30 to distribution. So I think council's aware that we tried to re-drill well 25, which was down in, let's see if I can find it here. This area of town, somewhere in here, I believe. The well was drilled and ended up having very high fluoride content, which is very unfortunate. We're going to turn that into a monitoring well right now because we do have to have 3 monitoring wells as per our license. And we are talking about drilling where our next drill would be for 2024. And in consultation with our consultant, it was brought to our attention that a few years back, I'm not sure when exactly, but there were two water wells drilled in this area right here. And we haven't done anything with them. They've been drilled. The data that we have right now indicates they're probably fairly good producers. Yeah, we're right there. Yeah, they're somewhere in here. Yeah. And the idea is with this particular project is we're going to check the chemistry on that, and then rather than drill a brand new well, we're going to tap into one of those and connect it to distribution. I think there's a treatment plant right here, I believe is where it is. So it's a short distance from those wells. So again, this is about increasing our water production and capacity of our system. So we're gonna try to do that without drilling a new well and use one that we've already have drilled.
Councillor Positioning.
Yeah, through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. If my memory serves me correctly, they were high producing wells but they were also high in manganese.
Yeah. And that could be the case. I think one of the things, through you, Mr. Chair, is that the chemistry is going to be relooked at, but the new Vision Well water treatment plant is to treat manganese, so potentially we could add it to that treatment distribution. So again, part of this is just checking the chemistry to make sure we're okay. And if that doesn't work out, then we'll have to come with a plan B. But that's our goal right now, is to try to use an existing well.
Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. Do you have any indication on how many liters a second that type of well can produce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't remember the exact amount, but it's fairly good. Like I think our highest 124. It's not that high, but it's better than most. It's higher than average. Sorry, I don't know the exact number.
Councillor Pasicny.
Yeah, through to Mr. Kitlitz. It was high producing, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Also, the one on Edson Drive that they did a test well there too, that was high producing, but it was high in manganese as well. So have you looked at that one as well, or are you going to test that spot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, but we certainly can do that. So I think what the goal is, rather than drill another one, is to take a look at some of these previously drilled wells and do the chemistry on them and see if it's changed or see if there's an opportunity to add that to distribution without spending the extra $200,000 to drill a new one. So we'll certainly investigate all those pre-drilled. And that's on Edson Drive whereabouts, do you recall? Or?
I can show you if you put Edson Drive on there. They drilled it right here.
Okay, in here? Okay, okay,
Yeah, just to the west of the group home.
okay, all right.
Because it was town land and there was a space there and they drilled it. It was high producing water, but it was, again, it didn't touch them because it had manganese.
Okay,
The
we,
thought at that time was, sorry, Mr. Chair. The thought at that time was it was too expensive to try and remove the manganese, so they were abandoned at that time.
okay. Certainly worth looking into for sure. So we will investigate those.
Any other questions? Okay, continue.
Okay, council is aware that the provincial regulations on water treatment, wastewater treatment are changing. And we had Stantec do sort of not a design, but a study on our current treatment to identify where we are at, and upgrades are needed. We have until we got as part of our wastewater license, we have till 2028 to upgrade our treatment to meet the new phosphorus levels. And sorry, I'm not an engineer with all the nitty-gritties on the details of the chemistry, but we have a new regulation to meet, and this upgrade will work towards meeting that regulation. This year, we're asking just for the design work to be completed so that we can get the construction work done prior to 2028. And as council, I think, is aware, you supported us applying for a grant for this particular item. We weren't successful in getting that grant this year, but we resubmitted, and hopefully after the design work's done, we'll be successful for that grant in 2025, 2026 for the construction of this particular upgrade.
Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. I've said this before, that this is just a money pit with all the constant changing regulations. So this is just for the design. Do we have any kind of indication on what a potential cost for the capital portion of implementing that plan would be?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So right now, based on the work that Stantec did previously, we're around the 3.1 to 2 million mark. And that's what we applied for the grant. And I don't think it's fully, we get the full amount from the grant, but I can't remember exact number. But yeah, it's a pricey one. And this design will probably get us a more accurate number that could be more.
So glad we built that new wastewater treatment plant. How many years ago? We already did our rants on this one. So I do know that the MLA's office just this past week followed up on this for us, and hopefully we'll hear back and be successful in obtaining those grant funds. Next item.
I think we're on number 20, which is a wastewater loading station retrofit. This is a pretty minor one. Right here at the entrance to our wastewater treatment plant, there's these two little stations here. These are the stations where folks that want to purchase our treated wastewater to use for processing in industrial. The way these work, there's pumps in these shacks, and the water's drawn from way back here where the plant site is. I'm not sure exactly where, but it comes a long ways, and there's quite an elevation change. What's happening right now is the water drains out of those pipes, and when we get a customer, we have to prime the pumps to get the water to come back up all the pipes so that they can draw this water. So this is just about retrofitting some new pumps and trying to figure out a way to keep those lines charged, so we don't have to manually send operators out there to charge the pumps every time we get a customer to those. So just a bit of an upgrade and repair to that system. Okay. Library. So as council is aware, we're going through a renovation of our library right now. One of the things that was found that we had some storm or some drainage things that we needed to take care of. So what we hope to do is do the design work for that this year while the renovations are going on, and then in 2025 we'd improve it. Right now, the drainage goes to a sanitary manhole right here. So we are draining our storm into a sanitary system, which is something we do not want to do. As council is aware, we had a major I&I problem. We're treating stormwater a lot in our wastewater. So we want to remove that. We're also contemplating the design to maybe put a small parking lot here for the library, which would include the storm infrastructure to get that stormwater out of our sanitary into the storm system. So this is just to do that design work this year for future construction.
Just on that, Mr. Kittlett, so expanding a little bit further. So we did have our stormwater assessment that was done with as you mentioned, the obscene amount of I&I that's happening within our system. What is our plans for the southwest portion of town, which was seen as the major issue in terms of what is causing our issues within our storm management system?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, good question. So right now, internally, our staff are trying to find some time to go do some investigations on our own first to see if we can determine where that I&I issue is coming in. And if that fails, we'll be looking to get some outside help with that. Right now, it's not identified as a capital. I think we can probably try to fit that under an operational item. But it is on our radar. We're trying to find it right now, and we haven't lost that. It will be a body of work that we will be tackling this year and for next year, so that we can recommend whatever improvements we need to fix that. So we're on that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kittlitz, and I have seen our utilities folks in the area. My concern, because we've done many projects where we think we can do it internally and we don't necessarily have that capacity. So I know this is a major issue for our community. So I just would hope that administration would come to us if you need financial resources to bring some people in to deal with this, so we can get some better answers. I think, at least from my perspective, I think our council would be supportive of that. I just don't want to see us a year from now saying, well, we haven't had a chance to have a further look into that southwest portion of town. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I through the mayor to Mr. Kittlitz, I echo Mayor Zahara's comments. I had that note. I was gonna talk about the inflow issues. I think it was around 63rd to 70th Street. I think it was the, like you said, southwest area. I would have zero problem investing in terms of a capital or bringing in outside help to ensure that it gets done in a timely manner. I think it was 17% of the inflow issue was coming out of there. And it could be a simple fix. It could be. We don't know, but I certainly want to make it a priority, because it does. I think at the end of the day, they said it costs us dollar bills. At the end of the day, it's costing us money. So if we can correct that and make it a priority, I certainly would.
Absolutely. We will.
Okay. Anything else on that item? Okay.
Item number 22, 54th Street and 2nd Ave intersection improvements. As part of the development for the pivotal site, a traffic impact assessment was required. It analyzed this intersection here at 54th Street and 2nd Ave. Basically, the TIA declared that the development itself didn't trigger any improvements to this intersection. They were already warranted previously. TEC now, I guess, Transportation Economic Quarters, has reviewed this TIA, and they've sent us correspondence asking the town to complete upgrades to this intersection by April of 2024. So it's on the list. I can share that I've asked for a meeting with TEC. Both our consulting engineers and Pivotals have re-looked at the impact assessment and have some new information we'd like to share with TEC that suggests maybe we don't need to do these improvements right away. We're going to try to convince TEC that we can defer these to a later date. As council also is aware, we've heard from TEC that they are potentially hiring a consultant to do some design work on these highways for some upgrades and improvements. From my perspective, I don't know why we would go do that right now. Why wouldn't we wait until their design work is done and we can do it all in one shot rather than doing these improvements right now? So we're going to work on that, but I think because they've sent us a correspondence saying it's required to be done, we've added it to our capital list, and we'll hopefully have more news on that in the next month or so.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to council administration, I think I've said before, I would have serious concerns about doing a lot of work on that intersection. I think Mr. Kidlitz sort of spoke about this, and then having the province swoop in and say, oh, now we're doing a whole resurfacing or redoing of Second Avenue, and that just basically we just burned a lot of money. I would have a serious concern. So if we can delay, if the province hopefully will come through, I know we've been lobbying hard in the next budget that they can come through and redo that. That can save us some time, and we can just coordinate efforts if they are going to redo it in terms of what our portion is of this project. So that's my take. I certainly would have serious concerns if we're going to do it even in the next 2 years, and then in the third year the province steps forward and they're doing something. So that's my comment.
Mr. Killett, so what type of improvements are they requiring at this intersection? Are we talking about signalization or turning lanes or?
So, Mr. Mayor, I think where we've landed with our consultant engineers is really what it comes down to is just some radius improvements, increasing the radiuses on these turns in and out of the intersection, which aren't substantive really, but one of the big issues is there's a lot of underground utilities and whatnot in here, which makes it a bit more complex. So that's my understanding right now that we're not talking about turning lanes and traffic lights, it's just some radius improvements. The other thing that comes into play as well is the second item number 15, where I talk about the sanitary improvements. That sanitary improvements coming down 54th Street to First Ave. Probably directionally drilled under the highway, but still, that's another construction project that's happening next year. That again, why would we do all this work until Tech has decided what they're going to do with their highway improvements, so we can coordinate it together. So. Remains to be seen. We're still working on it. So hopefully we'll have better news about this particular project in the next month or so. But as of right now, it's a requirement from the province.
As we talk about this area and we talk about the sanitary on this street, is that going to address some of the other heaves that are between 4th or 2nd Avenue and the railway tracks? That is another bad portion of road within our community with a lot of traffic.
In here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go airborne in some of those areas.
Yeah, yeah. In terms of the sanitary project specifically, I don't believe they would, because I think that pipe, well, I guess potentially. Until we get the design, I guess I don't know for sure, Mr. Mayor. So maybe when we see that complete design from McElhaney, I'll be able to answer that better, but so I'm not sure right now.
I just think if we're going to be doing work there, we probably should address it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Just my perspective. Sure. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, moving on.
Okay, we're getting down to the part of the list that doesn't really need any mapping. So number 23 is an asphalt repair trailer. I'm not sure how many members of council made it to Public Works Week in May. We got delivery of our crack sealer, but the supplier also was showing off their road patcher, which is another big trailer unit that allows us to do bigger road patches. My understanding is it's not going to let us, for example, 6th Ave that's being ripped up right now, it wouldn't be big enough to do a patch like that. But for utility digs, for example, council may have seen on 50th Street here, there was a small sanitary repair outside of the post office. So this unit would allow our staff to go and patch those types of holes in our asphalt and our roads, fire hydrant replacements, all those patches that are probably 10 by 10 or 20 by 20 in size. This unit would allow our staff to go and do that. So it's sort of on this track that we've been on. I think council shared that we need to continue to maintain our roads, and this will allow us to do some of that work along with the crack sealing to hopefully extend the life of our road infrastructure. So this is what's being asked for.
Having seen that trailer, it was pretty impressive. So I'm certainly supportive. Councillor Posichny.
Through the mayor to Mr. Kitlitz. Does the asphalt repair trailer require there to be an asphalt plant in the area?
3 years, Mayor. I don't believe so. I think the unit's all one unit where they can actually heat up the asphalt right on that particular unit. And then that's why it's not for a big road patch. It's just for, sorry, I don't know the exact size. We can certainly get those details, but it's for large but not too big patches, mostly for utility digs and stuff like that.
Councillor Barr.
Thanks, through the chair to Mr. Kitlitz. When we require a repair right now, what is the process? Is it being hired externally or contracted or somebody brought in?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's a great question. I think that we use our cold mix and our hot mix. It's just what staff are able to create on site, really. And yeah, it's shovels and packers, and it's quite manual. This is a unit that does it all at once for us with 1 or 2 operators. So.
Councillor Prasicny.
Yeah, through to Mr. Kitless, I love the idea. Are we going to require like a little packer for it too to make it smooth, or do we already have a packer, or do we have to rent a packer? Like, how does that work? I'm intrigued, so I'm curious.
Okay, to you, Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. I think we do, but I'll have to get back to you on that. We'll get some more details on it for sure, and I'll talk to our transportation manager and get some more. But I don't know for sure. I think we do.
Councillor Chenard.
Through the chair, I'm also intrigued by this asphalt thing, so I take it's probably propane fired to heat it, and there's a grinder on it, because I didn't see it, but I've seen ones on the highway of bigger magnitude, so it must have a way. How do we grind the asphalt so we can heat it? Because if you're taking out big chunks, how do you melt them down?
And can it be pulled by a fire truck?
And can be pulled by a fire truck.
That was going to be my answer. The fire truck will do it.
Or
Through your Samaritan. So you know what? Again, great questions. I know it has propane heat. I think there's heating. I'm not sure about the grinding aspect of it. So, this is our first look at this. Certainly, it sounds like council's has some more questions about this. So we'll make sure that we have pictures and details and specs and what other equipment are needed for that and for future discussions.
YouTube it. Any other questions? Seeing none.
Okay. Where are we? Number 24, just about down here, Mr. Mayor. So we have the next two are a couple of light fleet replacements. We have a 2011 Dodge half-ton. This is just one of the trucks in our transportation fleet that's up for replacement. And then the 2013 mechanic service truck is also up for replacement this year. So we're looking at replacing those 2 units. And then finally, the number 26 was a project that was identified on the 2023 capital plan that we asked council to defer at spring budget. So we put this back on. We got some preliminary design and costing from Fortis on this. We've asked them to ensure that as part of their plan, they can do it in the summer, given the proximity to the school. So we're hoping that they can fit that in and do that over the summer months to bury those power lines.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration. I know earlier in the year we looked at our policy in terms of selling off assets that we might have in terms of replacement trucks and things like that. Are some of the things on this list that we are replacing, whether it be the trucks or things like that, are they going to be, are they straight to the junkyard? Are we trying to salvage or sort of some cost recovery or sell them to a third party? I don't know the condition. I don't even know about the new ice resurfacer. I know that Ms. Byers indicate there's a carbon monoxide leaking. I would hate to sell that to somebody, but just wonder if there's what your thoughts are on some of those replacement things.
Yeah, to you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Taylor. So that's a really good question. I'm almost thinking, didn't we just have a policy come forward about our yeah.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Taylor, with regards to as disposing of our assets, of course, if we can trade in, and that's the situation with regards to our ice resurfacer, we have the opportunity we make the decision whether we keep it and have it as a spare. Sometimes in these cases, like our fleet management plan, I think as a whole, SLT has reviewed this plan. I think in the time that I've been here a couple times where we understand whether we lease, whether we, continue to purchase, and I think that there's been a different philosophy over the years. We are reviewing this as far as determining where we can potentially use these other fleet, where maybe they're not used as often, where they can be repurposed in another area. So when it comes to these particular ones, I'm not sure. I think we could bring that back as far as what we plan to do with these. But if there's value left in it and there's an ability to potentially, with the used market, I think it always comes down to what makes financial sense for us, and also where we might use this particular fleet vehicle. Sometimes what we see is we've placed fleet vehicles in places that it doesn't make sense. And I'll use the example of having a two-wheel drive vehicle in our community. We have an excessive amount of snow, ice, etc. in the winter. It makes it pretty much impossible for individuals to move around our community. So I think it's an overall look and ensuring that we're, what makes financial sense for us each and every time when we're disposing of a unit, and also if there's value, and it also always matters is about the trade-in. If we can get more for our trade-ins, it makes sense for us potentially in that case. Or in this situation, we do a lot of leasing. And, I think I provided an update yesterday with regards to where we have an opportunity to lease something, it makes sense. So overall, we can bring that back to council as far as our overall view. I would have liked to have been able to really review all of our assets this year, unfortunately. Again, I failed where I'm not able to bring that back to council. So when it comes to our fleet management, we are taking a much closer look at this. And I think that when managers are putting these forward, in some of these situations, like 2011 is a long time to have a vehicle. In this day and age, it doesn't make sense. And when we look at our mechanics and that efficiencies as well internally, it's all a part of, does it make sense to have these older vehicles, or does it make sense to move forward with newer vehicles and less time that it's tied up being serviced? That's a part of it. Every time that we are dealing with these older vehicles and they sit in the shop, that means we're not out there doing what we need to do and moving, whether it be our staff around or moving equipment around. So I know that doesn't really answer. I think it just gives you a well-rounded view of kind of what we're looking at when it comes to our fleet management. And then we're looking at, that centralized view to make sure that we're looking at each and every purchase and disposal very carefully.
Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor, through to administration. I'm actually glad you're looking at that policy. There was a time we used to order bare bones two-wheel drive vehicles, and they had zero resale value when we wait for 20 years. Most manufacturers consider a vehicle to be obsolete after 10 years. They don't even manufacture parts for them. So 10 years or more is too much. And if we don't have any, if they're not four-wheel drive, they don't have any options in them, they have no resale value in Alberta. So I'm glad to hear that. But my actual question is, and it sparked my memory, we built a garage a long time ago at Glenwood for the old Blue, the old... if you've been in Edson a long time, you remember old Blue used to be our ice resurfacer that we used to use as an old blue Ford tractor. I think it was a Ford tractor. Mm-hmm. The ice resurfacer on the back, we had it out at Glenwood to resurface it. And I don't know if it's still in existence or still around. And it goes to my question on our ice resurfacer. It may have carbon monoxide, but it would work outside. Are we looking at possibly, first of all, the question would be, is it good enough to use still, or will it last? Could we use it in some of our outdoor rinks to redo the surfaces, or are we actually going to trade it in? Because we did that a long time ago, and it was the people out there loved the fact that they could actually flood and cut the ice, and it was really nice. So I'm not sure if it's feasible or not.
Go ahead, Ms. Byers.
Through the mayor to Councillor Pisichny, we can certainly look into that. I know the one that they're using right now that does have the carbon monoxide issue. Part of the way that they get around it as well is just with better ventilation and whatnot in the arena. Like, it's not necessarily the machine, because they are going to emit certain things. So they were thinking of actually keeping that one as the backup, and then Old Shaky is the one that that may be either traded in or repurposed. I know that with the outdoor rinks, with them not being covered, you need to remove the big snowfalls and whatnot, where the ice resurfacer is not ideal. And the other issue too is that with it picking up rocks and such and going around, I don't know if parks would like to use it that way, or if we have good storage for it. What I can tell you is that we are sending a park staff to outdoor ice maintenance course this fall. Actually in November, and maybe I'll get him to talk to the other counterparts that are there with him to say, hey, is this something that we should be doing?
Thank you. And this actually refresh my memory with the new ice resurfacer, I think it might be worth having a conversation with our partners at ATCO about that, as they are often good partners and may be able to assist us with the acquisition of such ice resurfacer. So I'll leave that with you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration, the item 26, the power lines burial for 46th Street, 6th to 9th. I've kind of flip-flopped on this a little bit. I was thinking it as, oh, this is an exciting thing that we could maybe do to create some safety and then to certainly beautify the area, because we have sort of a relatively new school down there. The Parkland Lodge is relatively new. My issue is that it's $300,000 for 3 blocks, and that's, you know, and it does come out of our. I think we have an energy reserve that we have, and I'm not sure that's the priority we should be looking at. When we did have a report on the climate vulnerability risk assessment, when they talked about the current facilities that we have, the town-owned buildings that we own that need to be looked at in terms of, and that I think we can use money out of that energy reserve towards those initiatives. And I sort of go back to that report, and it talked about, the administration and operations centers had the largest number of like high risks and things like that associated with some issues. Obviously we're looking at the Civic Center building. What other buildings were sort of included in that? Was the fire hall, was the doctor's office, was it the airport? What other facilities? Because, you know, that could be sort of money well spent there, because I believe that in the end is actually costing us money with heating and with those types of things. So I guess the question is, you know, like looking at those administration operations centers, what was included there and what kind of upgrades could we create within that? Yeah, I'll start with that question.
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Taylor. So I think a couple things. Certainly, those are options for council to consider where they spend those energy funds. I think on the facility side, it looked at all of our buildings, but I think more importantly, the facilities life cycle project that's coming out, we're expecting a report on. I think that's where we're going to find the details on where we need to spend money to upgrade these facilities. The climate risk is just looking at the age of it and saying, hey, this is vulnerable. I think that report's going to give us specifics, and then, you know, in that regard, it's up to council to decide to prioritize whether these are more important than the other. So, but we'll get details on that.
Thank you, Councillor Barr. Sorry, go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Councillor Taylor. So this item is on the list as this was a council-directed budget request last year, so that's why it's on the list, just so everyone's aware. Okay.
Councillor Barr.
Thanks. So through the chair to administration. So my question comes back to last week. You presented the update on the projects that have already been completed, which is fantastic. And you did mention that, you know, a few times over the past year that the way we want to kind of like cycle our projects is to have these design-ready projects, get them ready in advance, and it makes sense, and I totally appreciate that. And then, you know, if as we've noticed in our community before, when we have design-ready projects, we get grants. That's how we got the Glenwood rink project completed, which is fantastic. And then, of course, with your main infrastructure projects, then, you know, it gives you time to tender those out properly and kind of be ahead of the game and get that better value for our residents. So in this proposed capital budget here that I'm seeing, you know, we've got a few, 3 different designs that have been completed this year, numbers 14, 15, and 16, which is really great. And I think all 3 of those items were on that sanitary condition assessment as well that was presented in August by McElhaney. But for 2024, I'm only noticing 1 infrastructure design project, which is 17, the 17th Avenue Deep Utilities design. Are we going to be having any other ones to have capital ready projects for infrastructure?
Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byers. So we only have this one identified right now, but I guess what I would share is that First Ave is being designed right now as well. That's not, you'll note, council note that it's not on this list, but it'll be a design tender-ready project as well that we'll have on our list. So we'll have two. Certainly, there's opportunity to add more, but again, this is about volume and the amount of work we have on the list. I think there's a lot of competing priorities. I think I was asked the same question by CEO Beveridge when we were reviewing this, and I'd like to continue to keep at least one design project on every capital plan at least. So we'll still have two for 2025, among many other things. So I think we're okay.
Do you have a follow-up?
I do. So where I was getting with that, and thanks for the reminder on the First Ave, because that was on the list for 2023, and maybe even before that, was during that McElhaney presentation in August. There were other ones identified, and I know I did bring this up at strategic planning. One of them being the B1, the capacity upgrades that Kevin Zahara mentioned, Mayor Zahara mentioned earlier, as well in that Tiffin area, that they did identify that even with the improvements, the presentation identified that even with the improvements on 10th Ave, that there still is a piping capacity issue in that area. And we previously were just talking about our reserves being fully funded, and there is reserve money, I think, available for designs. I realize we do have staffing capacity issues though, but it would be of interest to have that B1, for me, I think that B1 design completed so we can see where we stand on that.
Understood.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? Go ahead, Mr. Kitlitz.
So sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to, I went and pulled up the budget request form for the road patcher. So it's a 4-ton trailer mounted with a hot box package on it for the heating of the asphalt. And it comes with a plate compactor. So it's all one contained unit. And it's good for pothole patching as well as utility dig patching. So that's just some more information that I pulled off the request form for information for council.
Thank you. Any other questions, council? Well, that kind of wraps up that section. We have one more list to go through. So I guess we will go to attachment number 3. And who's taking the lead on this one? Mr. Hamlin, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Through you to all of council. We do have some information and I believe even some updates as well on one of them that's identified as to be determined, but we have included the 7 capital projects that council shared with administration earlier this year for the 2024 budget. As it would happen, and as Mr. Kitlitz had indicated, you'll see number 1 being the First Avenue Total Rehabilitation Project. We were in the midst of doing detailed engineering and design on that project, and that number has come in, so I will share that we were able to obviously put a number to that, and you see that there. The second capital initiative, and so I will say that administration is committing to have further details for this when we bring it back to council in November. But you will see the second being the placement of permanent compost bins in town parks, and we will be bringing details on that. I will ask Ms. Byers perhaps if she'd like to, I'm so sorry. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just one second. So this is to determine whether or not we're bringing details on this.
Oh, okay, sorry. So thank you, CEO Beveridge. So we do have the 7 items. I'm going to just open that up a little bit. And at this time, we're looking forward to answering any questions of council on these 7 items and what you would like to see brought forward. And I see that Ms. Beveridge would like to speak as well.
Go ahead, CEO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. So essentially, these items were submitted by Council. This is just for everyone's benefit. As you note, there are to be determined based on the amount. We have not reviewed as far as what it would take to undertake these items for the capital budget at this point. What we hope to achieve today is to get a sense from council actually and have specific motions from council of items you wish us to research and bring back for the November 14th future council meetings to when we deliberate further the capital budget. From our perspective, it just wasn't possible to get all of this information. And as council knows, when we're directed by council motion, then we are able to, we take that very seriously and we bring back the information. But for public, for the public meeting here, what I'd really like to see is that if council was able to determine if we are investigating all of these or investigating a few of these based on the amount of capacity that we do have, and what we've put forward as far as administration's capital budget, in which we've presented to you today. But knowing that this is also information for future budgets. So you noting today we've only presented a 2024 budget, but when we, as we bring out the 5-year capital plan, all of these items then we would be putting on the itemized list of the capital budget for future. Thank you.
So to CO Beverage, just process-wise here, we do have a motion on the floor currently. So if we want to go, are you proposing we go line by line, do motions for each of these to get clear direction?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We ran into this last year with having the motion presented at the onset. What I would suggest is that we make an amendment to the motion that council accept the council budget initiatives for information. That's strictly just the administrative. We can note that and then move forward with the council budget initiatives. That would make it simpler for each item, if you will, if you want to go through those. Would that be fair?
Well, I think what we would do is just call the question on the motion that's on the floor currently, and then we'll take separate motions for each of the items on this list, and that would make it very clear as to what we are discussing. Is there a general question that you have, Councillor Moore, or do you want to wait till we do those specific motions?
I could wait.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. So that's what we'll do. Councillor Byer?
Thanks to the mayor. For clarity, so we will approve the information that we have had presented. But on each of these motions, are we motioning to have it like which year? We're saying 2024 or 2025?
No, this would just be for them to come back with information in terms of costing for each of these items.
For this year or for the 5-year?
Go ahead, CO Beverage.
Ms. Mayor, through to Councillor Byer. So at this moment in time, we're bringing for the capital project for 2024. Each of these items were listed as 2024 in the council budget request. They were all listed. And so I think for this, let's stick to the ones that we want to have for 2024 that are imperative that you want us to research. They don't leave, as I'm noting, they will not leave our list. Essentially, when we're contemplating bringing back a capital plan, they would be incorporated into that plan in which administration would present to you, and council would have the opportunity to move that around, whether it's 25, 26, 27, etc. Is that fair?
All right. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council direct administration to bring back costing for the placement of permanent compost bins in town parks as a part of the 2024 capital projects list? Councillor Taylor, you want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and who wants to speak to this item? Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
There we go. Yeah, through the mayor to council, I brought this forward because I heard from residents. This is, when you're in our park spaces, like our residents are getting very used to composting. They are. And they're having this internal struggle when they walk at the park when they're Tim Hortons coffee and they get to the waste bin and go like, where do I put it in here? I guess I put it in here. And we're trying to be good stewards of the environment. We're trying to be more proactive in that front. Certainly thinking about waste diversion away from our landfill. Now I had put this forward, but I also understand that although I put forward the motion, This doesn't have to be in the 2024 budget. It can be in sort of a later budget. And I was fine with that when I put it forward, understanding that there's an operational sort of piece that's going to come along with it. That if we put these bins, it's the capital, but there's an operational that has to be put along with it too, that Parks would have to, or someone would have to, would be a third party as well, that may have to take part in this. So I don't see right now the need to be putting them into the 2024 budget, but certainly something down the road is what I would like to see.
All right, thank you, Councillor Taylor. Council, have any questions, comments, concerns on this item? All right, so we do have a motion on the floor for administration to bring costing on this item. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is carried. Can I get a motion, please, that Council direct administration to bring back costing to supply and install a swing for disabled persons in Kinsman Park, possibly consider more locations as well? Councillor Moore?
I so move.
All right, and who would like to speak to this item? Councillor Taylor?
Yeah, through the mayor, on the last motion, although we can bring it forward, I guess I'll vote on the last motion. Vote to have those cost estimates, and then we can have it for future. We're not
years. Talking about that motion.
My apologies, and I'll move on. So, so the disabled person swing, this is again something that I had brought forward. We're looking at, within our strategic plan of building an inclusive community. And I know many parks in the county have these swings and have built within their parks to have more accessible equipment, especially for disabled people. I'm not saying, not in any weird stretch, that they're going to be used every day by disabled people. In fact, they might be used by able-bodied people as well. But to have that opportunity for parents with disabled children to come to the park and have something that they could use is something I think we should look at. I would also add a caveat to say, so long as they're not reducing any of the equipment as well, this is an addition. This is not to reduce, say we have to find a space, so we're going to reduce equipment within the current park. No, we should be keeping that equipment as well, but then adding it into addition. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, I don't know who will answer this, but through the mayor to whoever can answer it. I like the idea of a disabled swing because that's I've seen them in the news before when people in wheelchairs get to go on a swing for the first time. It's pretty life changing. But my question maybe to that is it just the swing? Because if you think about Kinsman Park in particular, we use a gravel for a soft surface for people if they were to fall off stuff. So does this include then changing the entire pad to the pour in place soft rubber so that it can be accessible? I'd hate to say, well, we got the idea for the swing, but we have to have it so they can get on and off of it. So I guess, is this a bigger project than just a swing, or is it I'm kind of maybe curious what we should be looking at there?
Go ahead, CO Beverage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we did review this particular item. Actually, Tanya was able to gather some information over the last couple days with regards to this particular one. As council noted during strategic planning, this was an important one that we wanted to look at. So not only is it the swing, but it's also, as you've noted, it's also the proper pad and access. So you're looking at additional because there's no ability for a wheelchair to access in a typical park where it's soft ground. So it would definitely be an upgrade to the area as well, not only just the swing, but also a proper pad and access for a swing.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor's CO Beverage, and just my visual experiences in terms of what I've seen in the county, they also have the soft surfaces out there as well, which was listen. I'm not opposed to adding those surfaces as well, the hard surfaces to make it accessible. Obviously, there's an additional cost to there, but it's just it would have to see what other communities do, I guess, as well, those that have it.
Thank you, Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to administration and council. So my question is the swing expected to be within the current boundary of the gravel park, or just somewhere within the Kinsman Park in general? I know last term we did look at some of the rubber portion, and I think there were other things that came up as well that made that a bit tricky. So I know going down that road might be quite a bit more expensive than we anticipated. But can we not have it somewhere else within the facility of Kinsman Park, but not necessarily within the gravel aspect?
I'll hand that over to administration, but I think we're kind of getting into the weeds here. I think that's what the costing will bring back, and with a more detailed plan in terms of, what is required in order to make the general concept work. Ms. Byers, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Through the mayor to Councillor Beyer, you're right. I think we are getting into the weeds, but these are quite substantial units and the ones that I have seen, they are typically, kind of a standalone where you create a pretty impressive base for them and whatnot, because there's, to get it on and off, and it's quite a production. So I think that we could definitely find a place in Kinsman Park or any park to have a unit like this, but thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byers. Any other questions, comments, or concerns on this item? For me, I just need to see what the cost of doing this would be. I think this aligns perfectly with our strategic plan. We have a number of individuals that are disabled in our community, and there's not a lot of options for them. And I think, what we see often is it's forgotten about because, if we look around our table, we don't suffer from those types of disabilities. So I certainly want to look at something like this in order to make our community more inclusive for those individuals. So I will be voting in favor. If there is no other questions, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Can I get a motion, please, at Council Direct Administration to bring back costing to expand Capital Reserve Facility Development? Councillor Beyer.
I so move.
All right, thank you. And would you like to speak to this one?
Sure. I believe this is one that I brought forward. It didn't quite have that exact name, but that's okay. So this is in regard. So this does tie in possibly to our utility rates bylaw review and how we fund our infrastructure projects that where we have some deficits, such as that McElhaney report and many others. Although I'm not certain that there is time to or capacity for administration to do this within the next month. I think it's a very laborious intensive project. But there is that one item that I mentioned, that B1, that I am interested in seeing being brought forward for a design. It was highlighted in that report, and had the residents in that area have all suffered a lot of damage financially, and also probably mental, emotional, and psychological stress as well of the challenges that we have there. So that would be maybe where I would possibly redirect that. But when that utility rates bylaw review comes up, I don't know if there's the ability at that time to kind of maybe integrate those a little bit. I feel that they're probably very closely related.
All right, thank you, Councillor Beyer. Council, do you have any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to maybe administration. I had actually read number 4 slightly different than Councillor Beyer in terms of, and the way I had sort of thought this was, and I thought I'd brought this forward because I used the term facility development in my proposal, in that through reports that we've had, many of the facilities that are owned by the municipality, they're coming to sort of an end of life cycle, right? And we're either having to do major upgrades or build new. And I think the library project is a classic example of what we think it's going to cost, and then all of a sudden we get rolling with it, and then it did go up, like where we thought it was going to be around the 2 million mark, and now it's about 3.7 million, I believe. That's a huge increase. But having reserves in place to sort of be prepared for those facility upgrades and be prepared for those renovations, I think is important. You know, we do have the multiplex, and we have set aside $70 million for that. You know, if the library project is any indication of what we're expecting, are we going to need more funds in terms of that? You know, like I hate to think about that now, but we need to be prepared. I'd rather be prepared now than be stuck and say, oh, we need an extra such and such money. We don't have any reserve to cover that. So that's kind of where I thought this number 4 was, and like looks like CO Beverage wants to jump in or Mr. Hanlon, so I'll let them.
Go ahead, CO Beverage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at the budget request form, you are correct. This is your item, and it was specifically dealing with YCE. What I would recommend for this item, as you noted earlier in the meeting, we spoke about reserves, and at the end of the year, we often, depending on our financial position, we may or may not be in a surplus position in which we can, council would allocate the surplus funds. That's some of the focus when we look at the reserves and where we're at. But I would, for this particular item, that's something that we can contemplate later on during the process of our financial position versus being a part of our capital budget at this moment for 2024.
Councillor Byer.
Through the chair to CO Beverage, thanks for the clarity on that. I do have a question. I don't see the item that I brought forward on that here. Is that added to the list or not at all?
Go ahead, Mr. Hanlon.
Thank you, sir. Through you to Councillor Byer. It is an operating initiative, and so that will be coming forward in conjunction with the utility rate review and correctly out of your utility rates, any proceeds do move into those reserves, but it'll come back with the operating budget.
So we do have a motion on the floor. Do we want to withdraw that motion then? I'll just vote on it? Okay, so we will call the question. Are you recommending, CO Beverage, that we approve or disapprove of such motion? For clarity.
For clarity, Mr. Mayor, through to council, at this point in time, we can consider this at the end of, you will be able to consider this at the end of the year when we have our position. And so my recommendation would be to defeat this motion at this time for clarity if you do not wish to include it in the 2024 budget initiatives, capital budget initiative.
All right, so I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion defeated. Can I get a motion, please, for council to direct administration to include upgrades to West Haven Rink in cooperation with community groups as a part of the 2024 capital projects? Councillor Byer.
I so move.
All right. Do you want to speak to it?
I can, but
I think this was a multiple council request. So.
Yes, yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know that the user groups in the area of that West Haven rink have been flooding that rink and wanting to do some minor upgrades to it just to help with the flooding, and are looking at some cooperation with the town and I think a small amount of money to be able to fix a few boards and things like that. So I believe that's what it is, but someone else can add to that if they wish.
Yeah, through the mayor to administration, I've had lots of talks with people in the area. There's a couple gentlemen that do spend a lot of time operating the rink, and they would certainly like to make some changes to it and sort of make it better. They have indicated and give strong indication that private companies would step forward to help supply many of the supplies and upgrades, but there will be some sort of cost associated with us, whether it be as fencing or things like that we might have to incur. But they do say, and I certainly don't want to mention companies here, they said that some companies will be stepping forward with supplying the wood or supplying the paving to it. So certainly just looking for whether we just set some money aside in terms of that if there is a cost that we need to incur, and I do think it to be a fencing issue in terms of a safety, in terms of flying debris or flying pucks coming off the rink into the street, and the kids not having to walk in their skates onto the road to get the puck back. That may come sort of in our world to deal with. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, through the mayor to whoever. I guess why do we just have West Haven rink? Because we have a very similar rink in Tiffin, older Tiffin as well. Would we apply the same parameters to that rink as well? If we're going to put like fencing upgrades and such?
Councillor Taylor.
Through the mayor to council position, I'm not opposed to that either. I know these gentlemen did approach me and sort of there have been preliminary talks in terms of admin, I think at some point regarding the West Haven rink, but I'm certainly not opposed to sort of upgrading that to any community rink. Whenever citizens want to step forward and sort of expand a project or do take care of the project, and they said that they would deal with the operation. They're going to deal with the day-to-day. And whenever citizens want to step forward and do that, I think that's an exciting thing. I don't think we should ever sort of look at rejecting those types of things. I know it's a staffing, thing. Do we have the time to do that? But if they're willing to step forward and make our community better and take the burden off of us to do everything, I think that's something we should always consider.
CO Beveridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Taylor and Councillor Pizzuti. The adopt a rink, and that's what I'm going to call it, because that's what it's in other communities. That's what it's called. And there's adopt a park, adopt a street, all of those sort of things. We are absolutely 100% supportive of our community taking on some of these projects to help spearhead it in partnership. I know that Ms. Byers has been in contact with this particular situation, and very much working through this and providing what these individuals would need in order to move forward. So just wanting to let council know that this has not been left. This has not been something that we've ignored or that we don't feel is valuable, because being community partners with these individuals, the more that we can work together with our community, the better off we all are. So for this item, this isn't when it speaks to West Haven rink, I mean, applying that across the board isn't an issue. I think it's the whole process when it comes to the adopt a rink of what the parameters, what that looks like. And most certainly, yes, there has been transition and there is staff time that's required, but it's something that in 2024 we do think that would be successful, a model to apply to the town of Edson.
Thank you, Councillor Pizzuti.
Yeah, I want to support it, and I do support it, but I want it to include the other. Maybe we need to reword it from West Haven rink to community rink. So maybe I can. Do you want me to move an amendment then?
Sure, if you would like to move an amendment.
I would move to amend the motion to say upgrades to our community rinks.
All right. So we have an amendment on the floor. Any questions, comments, or concerns on that amendment? We will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. All right. Anything else on this item from folks? Councillor Byram.
Thanks. Through the chair to council and administration. So just for clarity, it's just to get some rough costing on this, not to actually bring the adopter program back before the next budget. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That motion is carried. Can I get a motion, please, the council direct administration to bring back costing for the 63rd Street Trail System starting at 13th Avenue north to 17th Avenue, possibly Highway 748. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
I so move.
Thank you. Do you want to speak to that item?
Yep, through the mayor, I will. Again, lots of residents coming forward around that that live on 63rd Street. That there is no sidewalk there, and we were dealing with a fairly busy road, and it's a safety issue. Whether or not we expand our trail system or build a sidewalk, it could be a sidewalk disguised as a trail, disguised as a sidewalk. But it would link certainly places like Skyview and up to, I think I had about 17th Ave for sure. This goes back to our Trails Master Plan. It was included in there at the time. I don't know whether we're at a stage right now whether it is just best to look at design and then look at future costs, because what was put in the Trails Master Plan, I think those numbers are now pretty much obsolete. I don't think we could use those numbers as a basis of what we're using anymore. But so I guess I would ask the question, is this just to do design or do the full work? I guess I don't know what the motion we have is here. I
think this would be, go ahead, Mr. Hamlin, if you want to take a stab at it?
Sir, through you to Councillor Taylor, I think perhaps, and it's been established by infrastructure and planning, start to consider these as multiple year projects, where in the first year we bring forward a capital initiative for just the design to try and scope the project, and then try to put some numbers to following years for the actual capital construction improvements. So I guess respectively, it might make sense, given the magnitude or the scope we understand this project may be, that we look at the design in the upcoming year or years, and that'll then allow us to put a better number to what the actual capital implication may be.
Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to council and administration. So I certainly understand why Councillor Taylor brought this forward. There's definitely is a big safety issue for all of the families that live in that area that that want to access the airport loop. Once that airport loop was finished, it was just like people are coming out of the woodworks, walking that like it's amazing and wonderful. And this is something that I would be very eager to get on our books and to get a design, but I'm wondering that it is very complicated to try to get a design when you might possibly have land sales to consider with this. So I'm not really sure, is this just something to throw, like we're just throwing a, I don't know, say $25,000 that it's just gonna cost to go get a design, or that we wanna see what it would actually cost to buy this land out, because not everybody wants to sell either. So I'm just confused, or I guess I'm conflicted that to try to get something of this magnitude completed within a month is possibly unreasonable, an unreasonable expectation, if that's what that is. Because like Mr. Hanlon said, this is a multi-year kind of project. Like the airport loop took a long time because of some of these complicated aspects of it. So to get this completed in a month, I think is a lot.
Go ahead, CO Beveridge.
Councillor Byer, I would concur completely. It is not something that I don't think we can do in a month, even to just contemplate this project. It's a massive project. As we've spoken about this Parks Trail Master Plan, we've been trying to get it back to you for the last year. We need to bring this back to council. We need to have a full discussion of what we can do, what we need to do. We also have done there's just a recent report that's just hit my inbox here in the last week with regards to the current trails that we have. Before we consider adding trails, we have to take care of the trails that we have. We are in a position where the way that our trail system has been built, it has not sustained the test of time, unfortunately. So that's the reality of where we're sitting right now. So I would concur completely that we would not be able to deliver this within a month's time, and might be considered as we bring back the Parks Trail Master Plan for council's consideration to review at this time. If Ms. Byers, do you have anything further to add?
All right, thank you. I certainly see a safety issue in that area, but I do agree that when we look at our list of priorities, this is probably doesn't rise to the top, considering the scope of this project that would require staff time. Plus, I also think this council has not yet reviewed the Trails Master Plan, which has been done 10 years ago. I'm trying to think, when I was just a young, fresh councillor at the time. Much happier times. So I think we need to have a look at the overall plan. I do agree, though. I think this is an area that we need to focus on, but I don't think we are there yet. I think we have some other work that requires our focus here in 2024 in terms of the scope of the magnitude of this particular project. Councillor Moore.
Through the mayor and to who would want to answer this question, are we looking at appropriation? And if we are, how much? Possibly.
I think that's the whole thing, Councillor Moore, is that we don't know at this point in time. There are various accesses that we would have to try to gain with various landowners, and that's very complex and complicated. We had to deal with one or two landowners on the airport loop, and that took 4 or 5 years. So that's, I think, one of the challenges that we face for sure. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to council and administration. so long as it's, you know, and I think CO Beverage said that still on the book, still something we're going to consider. And I think that's the important thing, is that we begin that conversation that, yeah, we do need to look at the Trails Master Plan. We do need to certainly look at this area specifically, I believe. But using the time frame and perhaps the costs we're looking at and the other complexities, certainly deferring this to future years is probably the best bet. But so long as it stays on the list, because residents on there have spoken to me about their concerns. So.
Thank you. Any other further questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That motion is defeated. Can I get a motion, please, that Council direct administration to bring back costing for 55th Street power line burial from 6th Ave to 12th Avenue? Councillor Chouinard?
I'll make the motion.
All right. Do you want me to speak to it, or would you like to speak to it, Councillor Chouinard? If we can use a fire truck to get this project done, that'd be great. So this is, as I spoke about in strategic planning, underground street burial, power line burial is probably not the top priority for this community at all. But we have some sections in town that are not complete, that we have small areas that need to be done in order to clean up those areas. And it's an aesthetics thing. It's also a safety issue with overhead burial lines near schools, sidewalks, especially in the summertime with some of the lightning storms that we had. So as was on the list for 2024 to complete over by Mary Bergeron as well as Parkland Lodge, that was deferred until this year. I'm fully in support of that because that was an area that was missed, and that is the last section in that neighborhood that needs to be completed. It's also not staff intensive, as Fortis does the majority of the work. And historically, our community has done this work every single year as a part of our energy reserve funds. And we haven't for the last several years. We have focused on some other things in that regard. So at this point, I just want to bring back the costing to see how much this would cost in this particular area. Because that is the one main thoroughfare into the western part of our community. And at that point in time, make the determination whether or not we want to proceed, or at least have an idea of where we could slot that in our 5-year capital plan. So that's why I brought that forward, because I think that when you drive into this area, it's a beautiful area of our community. Unfortunately, the overhead power lines leave much to be desired. Plus, we have a lot of children in that neighborhood with some very large lines that are overhanging by the school and along the sidewalk area. So go ahead, CO Beverage.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for providing that context of that item. Fortis actually gives us the costing, so it will depend on how soon they could get the costing to us. If it's council's wish to include this, I mean, we can ask for it. I can't commit to for sure that it'll be brought back for the November 14th meeting, but just wanting to advise, we can request it, but they have their processes when it comes to their quotes, and it depends on what they have on their workload.
Certainly, SU Everett, and thanks for that. And for me, this is not like needs to be done tomorrow, but I just, whenever we get those numbers, it'd be good to know for future consideration. Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, through the mayor to council, I'd spoken about the previous burial lines about the cost. Again, it was $300,000 for 3 blocks, and now we're looking at maybe 6 blocks here. I'm willing to look at a cost estimate, but to proceed further than that will all depend on cost. Like that's where so I'm willing to sort of explore with Fortis what it will be, but if it comes back at say 600, 700,000, I look at that energy reserve, and I think that there are other things that we could look at exploring in terms of upgrades, and our life cycle report may come back and indicate that there's things in there that'd be better use. So again, in favor of the motion, just to bring back the cost.
Thank you, Councillor Chouinard.
Through the mayor, just so I'm not being quiet, I am fully in support of these burials, and if I'm not mistaken, we've been spending about $250,000 to $300,000 a year, and it is money from an energy fund. So to halt it. We halted for 2 years, and I agree, safety and beautification. That neighborhood needs to be completed. We got brand new buildings, nice neighborhood.
Councillor Pisichny.
Yeah, further to that, I support it as well. They're, the costs generally are related to the transformers. So if you have ground transformers in the area, you have to have a ground transformer, that drives the cost up. So sometimes picking areas without transformers, it's cheaper, but definitely if we do a little bit every year, eventually we'll have none left to do. And it does make the community look a lot better, and so I definitely support that.
All right, thank you. Any other further questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Byer.
Thanks. Through the chair to council and admin, I do share Councillor Taylor's perspective on this. I know that beautification is important. I'm interested to see what the costs are, and if the transformers, if there's less of them, then maybe it's less cost. I don't know. But I'll admit I am more interested in the life cycle report, and if there are energy projects on that can help upgrade our facilities that we're using that are instrumental to the functioning of our community and of our operations. So I will support it to get the data to find out what the costs are, but I will admit I am more interested in that life cycle report and using the energy towards that at this moment in time.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Well, I think that concludes much sooner than we anticipated our budget. Obviously, operational is a big portion of what we normally would talk about during the workshop, and that will be coming back in the spring. Once again, I do want to thank council and administration for taking the time to be here today. It's fantastic, and members of the public. While the meeting portion itself, there is no opportunity to ask questions. We will be hanging around afterwards, and I'm happy to have those discussions with the members of the public that are here. If anybody has anything else to say, now's the time. Councillor Pisichny.
Oh, I just wanted to move to adjournment.
Thank you, Councillor Pisichny. All those in favor of adjournment? Opposed? That motion is carried. Narrowly, I might add.